Hello everyone. Let us suppose that you are in a white room shaped like a cube, and there's nothing in that room but yourself. There's no bed, there's no television, there's no cell phone, there are no books. But after living in this white room for many hours, you realize that when you thought of something, that something would show up in the room. So in a completely white room, you thought of a triangle, and a triangle showed up in the wall, in one of the walls. Then you thought of a sphere, and a sphere was formed. And you were able to keep the sphere floating in the room. Then you decided to dim the lights of the room, and the room turned completely dark. It was still a box, cubicle shape, but now it was dark. And then you decided to make several spheres, and you made those spheres to glow. And you had nothing else to do, but you made planets going around those spheres. And then you learned that you could also enlarge the size of the room in an expanding sort of universe. And the more time you spent in that room, the bigger the room became. Because out of boredom, out of being bored, you decided to create all the complexities of your reality. Some philosophers say we create our reality. The universe exists, according to theories, acceptable theories, because we don't know if they're true or not. The universe exists for 13.5 billions of years. Everything took time to reach the current level, the current level of complexities. Because in the beginning of the story of the universe was rather simple. But as the universe expanded and aged, it became more complex. The first forms of life on the earth were very simple. Bacteria, unicellular. And over billions and millions of years, life on earth became more complex. And the most complex form of life on earth is the human being. So this is a proof that evolution does exist. Humans didn't just invent the cell phone right at first. They first invented a way to wireless transfer information between two antennas, and then the radio, and then the television, and then the cell phone. So everything worked through steps. Nothing in reality comes into existence like that. It goes through stages of evolution. And the more we spend in this white room, which no longer is white, but dark, and the longer we spend alive in the universe, the more and more complex it gets. The more equations you put on it. It's like living in a country. The first inhabitants of a country live in a fairly simple manner. But over the ages, the nation, the empire grows and becomes more complex. And the direction of things and events in life, in our existence, is for things to get more and more complicated. Life became very complex when life formed humans, which we were not formed suddenly, but we went through an evolution. Because everything progresses, everything develops, everything is created over time. The mutations in the DNA, the genes. And that is the secret, that is the source of everything that exists, which first come out of an idea, and then it evolves through time. Hello everyone. Let's imagine a nice bell curve, a Gaussian packet, comprised of several wave functions. that when added up together forms the nice and smooth curve. So what we have here is that we have a Hilbert space in this quantum field of oscillations that when these individual wave functions added up together, they create this reality, which is the summation of these wave functions forming this nice and bell curve. So within reality, within history, within the matter and energy all around us, there are a great number of possibilities, which Richard Feynman described as alternative histories in the future and into the past. For example, until we study and we look back in time, either through stargazing or through doing some research in history, until we do that, we don't know what the past was like. But when we do that, we narrow down all the possible states into one single history. Which is why it might be dangerous to do space-time travel. When we travel back in time, we may find a different past from a parallel universe. Maybe traveling in time will be the same as traveling to a parallel universe. Because in fact, the past is a parallel universe in itself because it's the past. Imagine the history of the universe as being comprised of several pages stacked over each other. And a parallel universe is another block of pages stacked to each other. But so nothing prevents us knowing that particles travel between the universes all the time. Nothing prevents us that maybe if we travel through these dimensions, we could end up in a parallel universe, which would be catastrophic, to be honest. Like if you want to go back to the year 1960, and then when you go back there, you find out that it's a different 1960 that you study about it in school, but then you realize maybe I'm in a parallel reality, right? So we got this nice bell curve with all the wave functions added up to each other, forming the reality that we see, this space-time reality, right? And this also applies to people, what makes up a nation is the citizens, it's the politicians. It's not just a president or a king. It's the summation of all those quantum wave functions of personalities, which generates the culture of a civilization, of a city, of a state, of a nation, and of the world as well. So we live in a universe which is a quantum field of experiences. We got insects, we got animals, we got trees, we got of all kinds. There's the summation of all these possible cases within the DNA chaotic mutations, which creates new life forms. The DNA is a very long molecule inside every cell, human cell, animal cell, plant cell. And there are many possible ways that those molecules can arrange themselves to generate a new human being or a new species or a person with a different personality, because we also run by those chemical reactions in our brains, in our bodies. So we live in a universe with many possible states. But what makes up reality is the summation of all these cases. And then that's what we see as the reality, is that's what we perceive, the summation of all the histories, of all the evidence for the history. And also, as we are right now, there are many possible ways the history can take towards the future. So that's what we live, and this is what life is. It's kind of like we live in a bell curve, right? What makes a table is the summation of all the wave functions of the particles in that table. That's what make a table. What makes you, and what makes me a me is the summation of all those chemical reactions in my neurons, giving me the personality and making me perceive the world probably different than you do. That's what makes each one of us different. But it's the summation of all those possible cases that generate or a common view of reality, something that we may all agree upon. That's what reality really is. And this goes back to what I said earlier in other videos about reality being um, composed of circles and waves, and I'll get more in detail with that in the later videos. Thanks for watching. Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the elements in the grid and the concept of unity in the cosmos. What does that mean? It means the following. I was reading a book written by Aristotle, some of his literature, in which he stated that unity is not a desirable thing. That's because in unity, everyone is doing the same thing. But that doesn't work. Because each of us are different elements in the grid of things, of the universe, of a civilization, of a city, of a state, of a nation. Each of us have a different role to fulfill in the society. So, if everything is unity, everything is the same, then no longer we're fulfilling individual tasks, but we're doing everything the same way, and we're being the same, and that's a problem. Because if everybody does one thing, who is going to be doing the other things? Because it requires plurality, diversity, complexities for everything to work. A human body is made of several organs, not just one. So a human body is not unity, it's diversity. It's functions, it's hormones, it's organs, it's breathing in, breathing out air. Different functions, complexities is what make the universe as a whole. So unity is not really the word, because unity is just too simple. Plurality is what defines the universe and the goal of each one of us in the society. Thanks for watching. Matter and energy of the universe. All the colors, all the physical and chemical properties, all the complexities, all that exists is just similar to building Legos with molecules and atoms coming together, forming unique properties, physical and chemical, and generating all the diversity that we see all around us. In order to understand this diversity, we should go and we should follow some principles, narrowing down the complexities into simple, small steps. And as we go and we're guided through these simple, small steps, understanding the subatomic world, and then escalating up from the micro scale to the macro scale, we're able to understand not only the physical and chemical properties of matter and energy in the universe, but also the sources of all natural phenomena. And we can even make predictions to the future and understand the past, such as studying fossils. So everything in the universe is pure mathematics, is pure geometry, pure art, I should say. Nature is very artistic, and it's contemplating through these arts, through these complexities, through these geometries, that we're able to find meaning in our life, our existence, and for the universe. Hello everyone. There is a philosophical thought, which I don't agree with it, is the fact that reality and everything we experience in our everyday life is a mental construct. It's like living in a dream. This is a very dangerous idea because, in my opinion, if you believe that everything that you experience in life is a mental construct, you're probably going to try really hard to mental construct a reality that is more pleasant to you. So here's the problem. That's not going to happen. As much as you try to live in a different reality that for you will be better, you won't be able to. And this could even lead you to something called schizophrenia. You have to understand, in my opinion, that reality and all the experiences we have in life are experiences outside of us. Not things are not mental constructs. Things are real. Things are not illusionary. I don't believe in illusion. I'm like Rene Descartes. I think, therefore I am. This life is very real. Of course, you can do a little bit of mental construct to look at things and situations in life in a better way, but you cannot change too much of the reality, because like I said before, this is a very real situation. Because if you also think that things are a mental construct, you're delving deep in what you think life is a dream, and that means that you're going to do just about anything in your life, not obeying any rules, and just live out there without any dogma or so forth. That's the problem, because if you believe the life is real, you're going to take it seriously. If you believe the life is not a mental construct, you will try your hard, you study, you'll be very careful when driving and stuff like that, because nothing is a mental, well, I shouldn't say nothing is a mental construct. I think perception may be a mental construct. Like when you perceive an art, or when you perceive the world, or a sunset or a sunrise, you are somewhat doing a mental construct in order for you to be able to perceive that phenomena. But overall, things are real and things are somewhat separate from us. We are connected to everything around us. When you are in a room, you are breathing. Of course, if you don't breathe, you die. So some of the air that goes into you was exhaled by someone else. For example, when we had the COVID-19 in China, it spread around the world really quick. This is how connected we are with everyone else in the world. Things that are going on in Asia are affecting us here in America, because we are all connected. The air, the microbes, everything just keeps flowing. The water that you drink was the water someone else drank in the past, and you know how that goes, and then how it returns to the ground. So everything is reused, everything is recyclable by nature. So, but mental construct is the belief that you create your own reality without you knowing. And some people try to create their reality by knowing, but that doesn't work. We are connected, yes, but not in a way that some philosophers believe that we are. Reality is as real as it can be, and this is why we should take our life very seriously and just forget about this mental construct stuff and study reality as is, just like the Aristotle, Greek philosopher, taught us. Reality as it is. Not so much of that fancy thing, although some fancy, some imagination is worth it. Like Einstein said, imagination is bigger than knowledge. But there's got to be a limit on that too, because if you believe that everything is a mental construct, I don't think you can live a healthy life. So this is my thoughts about this philosophical argument. So, an antenna is a part of a device with flow of particles up and down, which generates a disturbance in space. Because when particles accelerate and they move and they change direction, they create a disturbance in space similar to the disturbance that is caused when we insert a magnet inside a coil, which generates a current. And this disturbance in space propagates away from the antenna into the air, into the space, and if there's another antenna who is also oscillating at the same frequency, a resonance occurs and communications is transferred between the two devices. This is why we say we should tune in to the right frequency, because two cell phones are able to communicate with each other when they're both at the same frequency, when they're both resonating. Of course, sometimes there may be interference, right? That annoying interference, something that interferes with our communications. But this is just part of the sea of quantum fluctuations in space, and a sea of several wave functions of particles and disturbance in space. That's awesome. We live literally in the ocean of light.